Today on the Worldview, what we're going to talk about is all kind of different. There's going to be all kind of different subjects. Back to Europe, U.S., Syria. It's just going to be just not a hodgepodge, but close to of different subjects, because this is the Worldview. Welcome everyone to another episode of Worldview. I'm Chris Greco, your host for the next 30 minutes or so, and we're going to be trying to go at least around the world or somewhere in that proximity to try to give you stories that are not normally covered by the U.S. media. And there's a reason why they're not covered by the U.S. media. It's because in many situations, and to put it bluntly, they're just not violent enough. They are not bloody enough. If it bleeds, it leads in the U.S. media. So I take it from Euronews, AP Network News, BBC, other areas that, maybe the U.S. media takes some of this as in a derivative form, but they just don't cover it. They just don't cover it well enough. So the first we're going to talk about is climate. More climate records fall in world's warmest February. World's warmest February. World's warmest February. Does that include the time of the volcanic eruptions back, when the world was first formed? Does that include, because it wasn't a February back then? How does that work? World's warmest February. Well, don't worry about that, because the headline is basically to clickbait. But when you read on, they qualify this. So it's no longer the world's warmest February. So basically, this is a misrepresentation. But hey, you got to sell, right? You got to get clickbait. So let's talk about this. So here's the temperatures. Now it says February 2024 hottest on record. Okay, on record now. So it's no longer in the history of the Earth, which would be, you guess at best, but it talks about hottest on record. And I think it's very important to, when you talk about these types of areas, is that we take a look at what we're talking about here. So we're talking about 1.5 degrees centigrade. Basically what happened is that Paris Climate Accords, and according to media outlets, going above 1.5 degrees centigrade meant apocalypse. If you read, if you read the earlier media, or you listen to them, it was all about that 1.5 degrees centigrade. 1.5 degrees centigrade. Oh my God, we're over it. We're over it. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. What are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you what. Interestingly enough, so this is 2020 here, right? 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, so this is whatever it is. And then you have 2000 here. So this goes to 2020. Well, if you take a look at this, you're going to see, yes, there are rising temperatures, but look at these lows. Look at these lows. Boom, 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 okay? And then you sit back and say, wait a minute, now, how many months were you over 1.5 degrees centigrade? That's 1, 2, 3. Okay? 1, 2, 3 months. 3 months over 1.5 degrees centigrade. But Chris, you don't understand. It's over 1.5 degrees centigrade. Well, if you take a look at it, according to the Climate Accords, and according to the climate, and then whatever the, COAX or whatever they call those things, where they get together and they talk about all this crap stuff. The bottom line on this whole thing is that you got to go 20 years. You got to go 20 years with an average above 1.5 degrees centigrade to make any difference. Average above 1.5 degrees centigrade. ladies and gentlemen, I'm a statistician, but I think you can see here that if you took all these areas, right, so 1.0, and you take all these areas here, it's above 1.5, and average this out, I think you're going to find that this is not 1.5 degrees centigrade average. It's just not. So, it's funny, and they say warmer than pre-industrial, but I want to point out something to you. Up until this point, which is basically about 1957, about right here, whatever you want to talk. I mean, I don't see these months, or I don't know what they are. Years. I'm almost positive these are years. So when you take a look at this, you take a look at right here, about 1957, 57, 58, 59, so about right in this area, right in here. That was the launch of Sputnik. That was the launch of the first satellite. There was no satellites other than the moon before 1957. So these areas here, when you're measuring them, cannot be compared to these areas. They can't. It's not just, it's like noon and midnight. You can't compare this. And the reason is because you got all kind of satellites up here. Also, where are they measuring these temperature differentiations? If they're measuring them in different locations, then you're going to get different averages. And it's really funny to watch how all these things come about. So that's basically what's going on there, and it's so funny to watch. I took a look at this stuff, by the way, Euro 5 and C3S and all that. You gotta get in there, and I'm trying to get data from that area. When I do, I'll let you know. Ex-Google engineer charged with stealing AI tech while secretly working for companies in China. They're worried about TikTok? They're worried about TikTok. I mean, well, first of all, and this is my opinion, but I'm a parent, is that if your kid's on social media and you're not monitoring their social media account, shame on you. Shame on you. You, the parent. You should be on that social media account. You should be monitoring that sucker. And I don't give a crap if people sit there and they say, oh, you got to give your kids some freedom. Yeah, you can give them freedom. You can give them freedom to go out to work. You can give them freedom to do things. But you're not going to give them freedom to get on social media just the same way as you wouldn't give them freedom on the TV, would you? To watch whatever they wanted? Would you give them freedom to watch whatever they wanted on TV? Anything. Shame on you. Not a good look. You're not their friend. You're their parent. So it's really interesting how this thing is working. So ex-Google engineer charged with stealing AI tech. Guess what? Got software engineer, right? Lin Weiding, a Chinese national, was arrested in Newark, California on 4 counts of federal trade secret theft, each punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Yeah, way to go, Google. So you hire this guy. How'd you vet him? How'd you vet him? So he's been selling trade secrets to China. Super. That's just great. I mean, we're worried about TikTok. Here's a guy who's a software engineer and just giving this stuff away. I mean, not a good look, Google. Not a good look. That's not cool. So you can imagine exactly what's going on with that area. Next story. California man is first in the U.S. to be charged with smuggling greenhouse gases. What was he smuggling in? Refrigerant. Yep, that's what he was doing. Things that make up refrigerant. So that's what he's doing. Michael Hart, San Diego, smuggled ozone-depleting chemicals across the border, concealed under a tarp and tools in his vehicles. So he's going to serve some time. Pleaded not guilty to charges, including conspiracy, sale of prohibited materials, illegal importation, blah, 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 blah. So here we are. Related to 2020 law prohibits the importation of hydrofluorocarbons commonly used as refrigerants. It's interesting, but I want to know, are there any exceptions to this? The EPA gives exceptions, folks. They give exceptions. Is anybody using hydrofluorocarbons? Check. I'd like to check that. See if the EPA is giving out any waivers on this stuff. Anyway, so this guy, he's going to end up doing some time, probably, because importing greenhouse gases. We're now punishing people importing greenhouse gases. Here we go. Yep, that's very interesting. Very interesting. John Kerry, speaking of climate and speaking of greenhouse gases and everything else. John Kerry reflects on time as top U.S. climate negotiator and major breakthrough in climate talk. Ah, John Kerry, you're so fantastic. Oh, yes. Go out and write that book, buddy, because that's where you're going. And so it's interesting, and everyone thinks that John Kerry is this great and glorious, climate person. Oh, yeah. And he was Secretary of State. Oh, my gosh, yeah, he did so much. Really? What did he do? Well, let's see. When Obama talked about this red line, right? He said, look, Obama, when he was president, said that he talked about a red line that Syria would cross if they would, be doing anything with gas aspects, which they had already done, but of course they denied. And so that all of a sudden it said might trigger a U.S. military response. But now, September, which is a month later, the president says it wasn't his red line, but rather a line set by international communities and by Congress, which is interesting because this is Politico fact check. It says, first of all, he didn't set a red line. It was Obama. The world set a red line, blah, 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 blah. October 20th, the year before that, said, I've at this point not ordered military engagement. And then he says, we've been very clear with the Assad regime, but also the players on the ground, that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus. That would change my equation. Yeah, huh? What would you do about that? I'll tell you what he did. There was a press conference with John Kerry, and they were saying, is there any way that we could prevent this from happening? And John Kerry said, yeah, if they completely destroyed or got rid of their chemical weapons. Then all of a sudden, Obama said, well, if that's the situation, let's go there. Let's go there. So that was it. I mean, so that, it's interesting. So factcheck.org, blurry red line. Blurry red line is right. So it's I wasn't just saying for us, I was saying for everybody. Well, let's take a look at this. OPCW, right? Chemical weapons. CW stands for chemical weapons. And when did Syria start? Well, they started in October of 2013. As a result, joint OPC UN mission, UN understands nothing, right? In cooperation with the Syrian government, all of the chemical weapons declared by Syria were removed and verifiably destroyed outside of the territory. However, questions about the completeness of Syria's declaration remain. Wait a minute. You just said, UN, that all of the chemical weapons declared by Syria were removed and verifiably destroyed outside of its territory. So they still have weapons inside Syria. Isn't that great? So the President of the United States said, you got to get rid of this stuff. They supposedly got rid of it. John Kerry was all part of this deal. And then goes on to be the energy czar. Yeah, I trust him, sure. I mean, he did such a great job with Syria that, I'm sure he's going to do just as great a job in climate change, climate stuff. Yeah, sure, great. So that's what's happening with that. Great, super. Let's move on to France. Macron, the abortion is now part of the French Constitution. I mean, it's being passed through. It's going to be, it's there. I mean, it's pretty much there. Macron hopes abortion rights are a political winner. Well, of course they're political winner. The place is socialist. France is a socialist nation. Now, people are going to argue with me about that. And I'm sure that Francophiles are going to be saying, that's totally wrong. It's your opinion. It's not my opinion. Look at the definition of socialism and look at France. Everyone retires at the age of 62. Everyone retires at the age of 62. And everyone gets a pension. It's not like Social Security, folks. Everyone gets a pension. He tried raising it to 64. People burned stuff in the street. Protests. 3-day, 4-day work week. Month-long vacations. It cut me a break. Who pays for all that? So it's interesting how Macron. He's absolutely a socialist, and the individual, he's president, right? But he appoints the prime minister. So he appointed this prime minister who's what, 12, I think. He looks 12, and it's a buddy. So he took the prime minister who was a woman basically, she resigned because he put her right in the middle of that retirement pension thing, threw her under the bus. And now this young guy comes in and he's totally behind Macron and everything the guy does. So it's an interesting situation how it works in France. Not democracy like you would think democracy is the United States, right? No, 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 no. It's not like that at all. So it's interesting. It's the right abortion in the Constitution. So this is really interesting. 25th Amendment to the Fifth Republic's Fifth Republic. Interesting, huh? The guy's a Gaullist, and everyone sits there and says, Charles de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle was a socialist. He was socialist too. I mean, he put it right there. I mean, he was almost he was this far away from being a despot. I mean, the guy was just interestingly enough. I mean, he did a lot of dirty tricks against the United States. In 1966, pulled out of NATO, said, we're out of there. Wanted all the U.S. troops out of France within a certain period of time. And Dean Rusk, the Secretary of State for the United States, said, does that include all those that are buried there in France? So I thought it was very interesting. So it's very interesting how all this is working here. So it's International Women's Month this month. Congratulations. Thanks, Mom. Great. I have three sisters. I have a wife, 2 daughters. Gender pay gap. This is the only country in Europe that pays women more than men. What country would that be? Well, France is socialist, right? They gotta pay their women just as much as they pay men, right? So who's the country that the pay gap is the largest, and whose country's pay gap is the smallest? Let's take a look. So you'll never guess. It's really kind of interesting, actually. So Estonia pays men more than women. I mean, how much less do women earn than men? 21.3%. I mean, this is crazy, right? Estonia, but yet Estonia is giving more per capita to Ukraine than any other country. Austria, Switzerland, Czechia, the rest of those. Let's take a look at France. There you go, France, 13.9. Oh, that's not cool. EU, 12.7 overall. So France is even above the EU. EU, that is funny. Lithuania, Sweden, Greece, all this stuff. Which one pays women more than men? Luxembourg. Italy is 4.3. Luxembourg, negative 0.7. Negative 0.7. I just thought I'd point that out. International Women's. There it is. By the way, I get it too. Title IX. A lot of the women are getting upset because transgender men, biological men, are competing with them in sports. I have a solution to all this. I have a solution to all of this. Co-ed teams. No more women's team, no more men's team. They all are one team. And I'm going to tell you right now that, women say, well, we can't compete with men. Not right now you can't. But let me tell you something. About 2-3 years, women would start to actually be on par with men. You would push men to do more, and the men would push women to do more, and all of a sudden you would have yourself on par skills, soccer, football, basketball, all these things. There wouldn't be any WNBA, be NBA. All of a sudden, yes, I understand. The women would not be able to compete with men on their level at that point in time. But give it a year or two, and I'm not kidding you, a year or two, and women would start to come up to snuff with skills and everything else with men. Then all of a sudden, now you're paying them all the same because they're on the same team, folks. They're on the same team. Think of that. I wish that an NBA team or a Major League Baseball team or a soccer team would make the first move and bring women in to compete with men. And I'm telling you right now, it would solve the problem. It would solve the issue. No more Title IX. You are on par with men. You get the same pay as men. You get the same benefits as men. All of a sudden, you're going to get women stars in men's sports. Think about that. Hockey, soccer, football, basketball. It's not beyond, and people poo-poo this. Why? Why? There are women out there that are really, really good. Put them in there with men. Put them in there. You know what that does? It eliminates these biological men participating in women's sports, because guess what? They can't do that anymore. They got to go and they got to compete with men in men's sports. So they can change their sexes all they want. They can say what gender they want to be, but guess what? You're still going to be on the same team, and you're still going to compete against men and against women. My opinion, folks. International Women's Month. My opinion. Next, German man who got COVID vaccines 217 times has no noticeable side effects. I know one noticeable side effect from an individual who gets 217 vaccinations against COVID. He needs help. Seriously, this individual needs psychiatric care, therapy, lots of therapy. That's almost like an individual who goes to cosmetic surgery over and over and over and over and over again. 217 times. This individual needs psychological help, serious psychological help. 217 vaccine doses in 29 months. That's 2 years. That's 100 a year. That's 12 a month. 12. No, that's 8 a month. 8 a month. That's 2 a week. 2 a week for 29 months. 2 a week. You're going to go get a shot twice a week. COVID. I mean, this individual they need help. They really need help. Shows no sign of being infected with a virus that causes COVID-19 as well. Well, how do they know that's from the vaccine? Yeah. Anyways, received the high number of vaccinations deliberately and for private reasons. Got it. So anyways, you can go to excesses. This is an excess. This is borderline. This guy needs help. He needs therapy, serious therapy. Okay. Hardened professionals from Colombia, right? Helping to fight Russia. They have this thing called International Legion, which is they're putting a lot of different things. Colombians. They're putting all kind of different. They're taking people that are military based people, and they're putting them to fight the Russians in Ukraine. I have a problem with this. I'll tell you why I have a problem with this. It's because they're using U.S. weapons. That means they get access to U.S. weapons. They're going to get access to Abrams tanks. When they get Abrams tanks, the Colombians are going to have access to the Abrams tanks. You think they're not going to share information with other areas? I mean, Venezuela. I mean, you want to see here. Let me just show you. I just got to show you where Colombia is, because I think a lot of people just kind of forget where Colombia is. So I'm going to just throw it out there and show you where Colombia is. So here's, there we go. So here's Colombia. Okay? Colombia's right here. Do any of these cities sound familiar to you? Oh, let's see. Cartagena, Medellin, Cali. Yeah, the cartels, drug cartels, right? So Colombia's here. That's the country that everyone goes to right before they get to Central America and go up to Mexico. What are they near? Oh, they're Venezuela, Ecuador, which is in trouble, Peru, which is also in trouble. So I mean, you have Brazil. So I mean, you have a lot of areas here that are not friendly to the United States. They're just not. So all of a sudden, you're going to have Colombians that are going to fight for Ukraine, and that's going to be an issue in my estimation. You know, nice that they're doing that, but daggum. So the final story I want to get to is measles in Africa. And I looked at this. This is what they call a Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report about Africa, and the fact that there's still a lot of measles in Africa. The WHO at one point said, "Oh, hey, Africa's doing great," and not anymore. They're not. It's a real problem. In fact, here's your. This is great. This is a great. If you can get this, this is a great immunization data. You can compare stuff. You can do it in tables, references, whatever you want to, whatever you want to do it. So I compared measles and mumps. You can even download this stuff. You can download it. Number of reported cases and incident rates. So here's 2000 to 2022. And you can see here that it looked like it was just about, it was down. It was down. Then all of a sudden, boom, look what happened here. 618 from 72,000, 36,000, bang, up to 118,000. And what are they blaming this on? 2019. They're about, oh, well, it's climate change. Climate change is causing this. Really, that's kind of funny because what happened down here, I don't understand, Oh, but climate change is a problem. Oh, what's happening down here? So it's really interesting how all of a sudden this is happening here. This is incidence rate and number of reported cases. So now you can do measles, mumps. I can just do measles. Boom. I'll just do measles. Number of reported cases. There they are, right here. I mean, I love this thing. You can compare. You can do all kind of different things. Compare this. You can compare all kind of different things. Compare of immunization coverage for. Look at all these different things you got. I mean, this is really amazing. Rotavirus, typhoid, yellow fever. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, hepatitis B, pertussis, hemophilia, measles vaccination coverage, immunization coverage, and we'll do, oh, I don't know. How about meningococcus, whatever it is. And then Africa, the African regions. And we'll go again. So, immunization coverage for measles vaccination coverage. So, there's this. We'll go to the chart, and this is what it looks like here. WHO, UNICEF estimates of national immunization coverage. Look at the coverage here, and this is what's interesting. Remember remember I said 2020 it popped up, right? But look at the coverage, 40% coverage, as opposed to 25%. But yet they had more incidence of measles in 2020 than they did in 2018, but they had less coverage of measles immunization. Of course, they call it second dose here. This is first dose. So there's first dose. It's pretty, 72%, 71%. Again, 2022, you had 71%. 2020, you had 71%. And this is 70 to 71%, and you still had a high incidence. And it's like, people go, well, Chris, I don't remember that. I don't remember you doing incidence. Okay, fine. So we'll do incidence, and we'll do measles. We'll do measles and immunization coverage for measles. So we'll do measles vaccination coverage. So we'll do that African region, and we'll apply that. And then we'll see, incidence of measles versus immunization coverage of measles, which I love. I love doing this stuff. All right, so here's incident rate here, right? Look at that pop-up, and look at the coverage. There, first dose, 70%. You got 70% in this area in here. But look at the incidence, 559.8 incident rate per 1 million. Look at that. When you have an incident rate of 116, and in a year, 2019, bang, popped up to 559, back down to 106. But there's the coverage. This thing's, 70%, 71%. So what are you saying? Oh, well, it's 71% here, but look, it hits there and it drops like a rock. What happened between 2018 and 2020? What happened between those areas? So, things like that is very interesting, how it works. Finally, I want to just talk about Macron one more time. French president raised the prospect of Western troops in Ukraine. What was he thinking? He wasn't thinking. He backed off of the stuff, and now he's saying, oh, we may do it, we may not do it. So I just thought that was interesting that the French say, hey, let's go. And why do I always talk about the French in such disparaging terms? You've got to read my book. So you can get it from Lulu. This is it. Should the United States reevaluate its relationship with France? You can get it from lulu.com. There it is. You can add it to your cart and have a good time with that. Or you can even get it from Amazon. And how do we conduct international policy with France? This is, it's only 118 pages, folks. Lots of references in there. Goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War and how the French tried to convince Thomas Jefferson basically have a coup over General Washington. So that's basically what I want to end it with, is a shameless plug for my book. So if you want to get that, you can certainly get it. Thanks very much. And now we'll have the summary and the conclusion to this worldview. And thanks very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for watching the worldview. I'm Chris Greco. I've been your host for the last 30 minutes or so to talk about different parts of the world, what's going on. And I don't know why the U.S. media doesn't cover these things, but there are other media that do, BBC, Euronews, Al Jazeera, and those are the ones that we're going to be bringing to light here, because this is the worldview.